So, Calan Mai or Beltane? Well, I guess that just depends where you live and what part of the Celtic family you belong to. And so, today, that's what I want to talk about. The Welsh folk festivals, or should I say, the Brythonic equivalents to the Gaelic fire festivals that we all know. Unfortunately even, it's just started raining, so, and I'm out here in my conservatory, and it can get a bit noisy, so I hope it's not going to be too bad. So anyway, let's push on, and I've already spoken about the two parts of the Celtic family, that of the Brythonic Celts and that of the Gaelic Celts. So the Brythonic Celts are the Welsh, the Cornish, and those over in the Breton part of France, well, what is now France. Before I talk too much about the folk festivals themselves, or the festivals themselves, I want to talk a little about what we call in Wales the Ysbrydnos. And the Ysbrydnos are, well, it translates to the Night of the Spirits, and there are 3 nights in Wales that are considered to be spirit nights. So the Ysbrydnos encapsulates these 3 nights. The 3 nights are Nos Calan Gaeaf, Nos Gŵyl Faer and Nos Calan Gaeaf, and they are basically Nos Calan Gaeaf. Today we call it Nos Calan Mai. Nos Calan Gaeaf meant the first day of the summer, but now we call it Nos Calan Mai, which is the first of the night, Nos meaning night, the night before the 1st of May. Nos Gŵyl Faer would have been the night before midsummer, so that is Litha. And of course Nos Calan Mai would be Beltane, so Nos Gŵyl Faer, Litha, and Nos Calan Gaeaf is, of course, Samhain, and so the 31st of October, the night before the last day of the year. And these 3 spirit nights were considered to be the nights where the boundaries were blurred between the physical and the spirit world, and so it was a night where the spirits crossed over more easily into the physical world. So it was said you should avoid churches, crossing stiles and crossroads, because those are the places where the spirits would gather. And it was said that this is the time when witches would dance with the devil, and you should avoid the devil, because the devil could take form on this night as any animal other than a white sheep. And avoid bridges, because the devil hid underneath the bridges. So the Ysbrydnos, the nights when the spirits would cross over into the physical world. Right, okay, we'll move on now to the festivals, and we'll start, as I always do, with Samhain, which is in the Celtic year, the start of the new year. Before I do, I should say that these festivals share the exact same origins as the Gaelic festivals. So pretty much all the beliefs and the utilisation of these festivals are for the same purposes as the Gaelic festivals. But there are, of course, some different localised customs, just as there would be in the Gaelic world. Not all parts of the Gaelic world would share the same localised customs, and so these Brythonic festivals, and I'm using the Welsh festivals here as probably the best example that we have knowledge of today. So there are some localised differences, such as Hwch through Gwta, which translates to the Tailless black sow. This was a custom whereby a man would dress up or don a pigskin, and at the bonfire where everybody was sitting around and the end of the night was approaching, he would get up and he would start to chase the children, and he would chase the children home. And it was said that the last child to get back to the village would be the one taken by the Hwch through Gwta. So, I mean, it's one way to get the kids to bed on time, isn't it? And from what I read, that's pretty much what it was about. And then there was another one called the Coelcerth. And this was when people would sit around and they would write their name or put a mark that identified this stone as their own. And they'd mark this stone and then they'd place it into the bonfire. And then the next day they'd look for their stone, and if they couldn't find it, then it was said that this was a bad omen, and it was an omen of your pending doom. So it's probably best to put that stone somewhere where you can find it quite easily the next day, and your mate doesn't know where it is. Okay, so let's now move on to the festivals themselves, and we'll start with Calan Gaeaf. Now, Calan Gaeaf is the equivalent of Samhain, and it was the 1st of November. Now, the festivities, of course, started sundown the day before. So that would have been October the 31st. As we know, is now Halloween. And as I previously said, this was one of the nights of the Ysbrydnos. So, the spirits were free to roam the physical world. And like Samhain, it was a time for the appreciation of the ancestors. But it also had the same meanings, important meanings to the village insofar as that it was the start of winter, and so things that needed to be done around the village to be able to deal with the oncoming winter. This marked the time whereby after the celebrations they would get to work ready to prepare for the winter period. And for those that believe in the ancient religion, this was the death of the sun god. Then we move on to Gŵyl Fair, you'll have to forgive me on this one, Canhwyllau. So I'll put the spellings up there. And this is the equivalent of Imbolc in the Gaelic calendar. And Imbolc, of course, in the Christian calendar, well, the Christians decided to make that Candlemas. So it's the 2nd of February. For me personally, I look at it as the 1st of February. I think that's how it would have been. Well, they didn't have the same calendar as us back in the day, but all the other festivals of the great Sabbats were on the 1st, and I see no reason why Imbolc should be any different. So, Imbolc, of course, is the first indicators and the first stirrings of spring. And it's a time where the livestock show the first signs of pregnancy. And so it's a time when the village needs to start to prepare for the new births and new livestock that's about to be born. And it's also within the ancient religion a time when the Earth Mother changes from crone, as she has been through the winter, to the maiden. Now that brings us up to our favourite, Calan Mai, which of course is Beltane, and the night before Nos Calan Mai. So as I've said, Nos in Welsh means night. Calan indicates the 1st, and May is the 1st of May. Now this used to be called Calan Awst, which was the first or the start of the summer. And in the Celtic world, Beltane and Nos Calan Mai indicate the start of summer. And this is a time where attention needed to be paid to the livestock. And we all know, well, some of us I suppose know, that during Beltane they build fires and they herd the cattle through the fires, and this was believed to purify the cattle from disease. And so this is a part of the customs that was performed throughout the village. It was a big fire festival. The driving of cattle through these big fires was all a part of the purification process. And again, this was the start of summer, and so preparations needed to be taken around the village to prepare the livestock for the oncoming summer, and even today. And I suspect they would have had to have done something back in ancient times too. It's May when they cut off the tails of the lambs. And apparently, if they don't do this, then maggots get into the wool and into the tail and can cause serious infection to the lambs, and they can be life-threatening. So these sorts of things are the sorts of things that would have had to have been done during this summer period. And of course, Beltane is where things really start to come alive. It's where summer really starts to kick off, and all the blooms and the flowers and birds and life really starts to kick off. So this was the time of the crowning of the May Queen and her unification with her consort, the Horned One. And then that brings us on to Calan Awst. And Calan Awst, of course, is Lughnasadh. And Lughnasadh is the 1st of August. And of course, this is the time where the crops are taken in and the harvest starts. So the village is very busy at this time. Or this festival would mark the time whereby they'd have this festival, and then everybody would start getting busy to bring the crops in and gather the harvest. And this is a time where the god, the sun god, would take on his role. As he's getting older in years now, he would take on his role as the wise sage and the hunter. Now, those were the 4 great fire festivals that I've just covered, and their Brythonic equivalent from the Welsh perspective. There were the minor Sabbats, which are the solar events throughout the year, so the equinoxes and the solstice. And they too have Brythonic counterparts. And we'll go on to those in another video. Those, just one thing to say on that, those solar events, or the minor Sabbats, in the wheel of the year that we're used to, the most Sabbats of most earth-based belief systems are or were adopted by the newer neo-pagan movement of Druids, Alban Athen, Alban Ela, Alban Hefin, and Alban Elfed. Now, as I say, those were the festivals that were picked up by Ross Nichols, his work from Gerald Gardner, decided that they were were more likely to have been the great rituals, or the important rituals for the Druidic people, based on their own research and knowledge and folklore that they were in possession of at the time. So basically Gerald Gardner went with what we've got today as the Great Sabbats, and Ross Nichols went with the solar events as being those indicators that were more important than Druidic class. And it makes sense, really, because for normal people it was important to have celebrations to mark the seasons, so they could get things done around the village. For the Druidic class, then this was different, as they were more philosophers and more involved with the religious side of things. They were more the mystics, and so what was important to them was the gods, and the sun was seen as a god. So for them, the solar events were more important. So I will pick up on that on another video. So that's it for now, and I'll see you next time.